But it really talks about keeping your eye on what's real, keeping your eye on the source of all life. And the really interesting thing, and it took me a long time to work this out, but the Romans considered the Christians to be atheists. They thought all Christians were atheists, basically because, and this gets like this, that a God is kind of an idol. An idol. If you think about it, the Greek gods, there are idols. There are idols. And gods do certain things and they have powers and all of these sorts of things. But the Christian God isn't that. It isn't a God. God is a word. But how do you put a name to the source behind all that is? How do you put a name to it? Because any name limits it. Any name limits it. How do you put a vision or a sign, a thing to love? God is love. You know? It's not something you bow down to, it's something you experience. And one of the things we begin to realise is we experience God in our relationships with one another. You know? So how do you put all of that together? Because it's not some war leader, it's not something like that. It's something much more kind of circumspect than that, and much deeper than that, much deeper than that. And I've found in lots of times that when I'm meditating, behind all that is a warm, loving, I call it a presence, but it's not really a presence, it's experience. Because if you start defining God, you start limiting God. And if you start using the word God, you limit it too, you know? So that, how do we find God? We find God in our relationships with one another. We find God in loving compassion. We find it in those sorts of times. Like, one of the things that's really surprised me a lot is that if I go to New York and talk to the homeless people on the streets of New York, I'm talking to the people here. If I go to California, in Los Angeles, talk to them on the streets, I'm talking to the people here. If I go to England, I'm talking to the people here. And we had once a month, and Joe was at it last week, we have what's called a community council, where we sit down with all the guests and all the people, and we listen to all the complaints and all the positives and all the negatives, and try to work a way forward. And I said, you know, you guys, you've all got brothers and sisters everywhere, only you don't know it. You know, you might be on the street all on your own, but you're not. Because your brothers and sisters, you're part of a whole community of people. And I said, then I started waxing on lyrical. And I go, oh, we're all alone together. And afterwards, one of the guys who's sleeping on the street came to me and he said, he had tears in his eyes. He said, really, what you said, we're all alone together, is true. It's true. He said, you've got to make a big poster and put it up on the wall saying we're all alone together. Because we're a community of people. And that's all of us, in a way. We're all an entity in ourselves, but part of